CIA recruits knowing that they're looking for people that have the right balance of anxiety and risk tolerance for most of their positions. Because remember, most positions at CIA require heavy analytical thought, heavy learning, heavy repetition or training, attention to detail. All of those skills are built into somebody who has anxiety, right? Anxious people with their natural paranoia, their natural introversion, their natural distrust, their natural research curiosity are a fantastic fit for that kind of work. It's really only the field officers who have to go around the world and travel and try to meet people. Those are the only people where anxiety could potentially be a detriment. And even then, you want them to have some anxiety because you want them to always remember, they always need to have the gift of fear, recognizing that they're on the edge of getting caught at all times.
Yeah, that's weirdly my anxiety works its way out socially. Like if I'm home, that could be bad. But if I go to a party, I'm like, God, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I'm working my anxiety out by having a conversation with somebody. It's very odd. It's probably a flow state type of thing where I don't even have time to deal with it because I'm like really enjoying this, for example. But if I had background stress, like a lot of it, after this episode was over or after we stopped hanging out, I might be like, oh crap, here's the anxiety monster once again. You know, it depends. But it's something I've learned to tame on awkwardly, maybe or unusually through the work that people are experiencing right now.
I find you to be a fantastic example of this, right? Because look at what you've accomplished. Even before you were accomplished in business, you were being assessed for work in a secret intelligence agency. Then you built a massive business. And then even after the previous podcast changed, you rebuilt another podcast, right? Like
Keep fluffing me up. I'm here for it.
But think about it for a second. Think about it for a second. How does somebody achieve all of that? And then you also know that person has anxiety.
Oh no, it's the anxiety is the superpower, man. I'm telling you, I agree with you.
I think it's so fascinating, and I think it's such a detriment that socially we make anxiety out to be like a bad thing. Like we publish news articles or medical articles that say that 25% or 30% of Americans have anxiety, like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the level of anxiety. But I will tell you, now that I'm 44, family man, more chilled out, the growth of the business has slowed, and I like it that way. The people that I know that really are like at the top, busting their ass all the, they're miserable, but they could be a billionaire one day. Good for them. I wouldn't trade lives with them, I'll tell you that. Certainly not.
But I just want to make, like, to me, I loved working at CIA with such amazing people, and so many of those people had anxiety.
I bet.
And watching how capable and talented they were at what they did, and then coming into the outside world where somehow people with anxiety felt ashamed and they felt like they were lesser or inferior, it's just heartbreaking because how much productivity and talent is being underutilized because we're letting people believe that anxiety is a weakness, when in fact, the people without anxiety are the ones who have less capability to really make a massive splash.
Is there anything you learned at the CIA that the American public doesn't know that you think was like disturbing or shook your worldview? Obviously, you can't share what it is, but I'm curious because, I feel like I ask a lot of these folks and they're like, you'd be surprised how boring it is back there. But you kind of, unique access.
Yeah, it is really boring out there. But I will also say that there are absolutely things that I learned that shook me and that I am certain would shake the American public. In fact, before CIA, I used to be one of those people that was like, oh, the American public can handle anything. Like, trust them and just tell them the truth. And then I got to CIA and I was like, do not tell the American public the truth.
Yeah.
Like, if my mom or my sister or my brother-in-law learned about this, they would lose their shit. And then they'd all have an opinion about what we should do about it. And then they would all start to join communities of people who thought of what we should, and then all of a sudden shit would just fall apart.
Right.
It's so much better to keep people who do not need to know, keep them blind and focused on the things that they can control. And that's really the important part here, is there's so much that you and I and the American public cannot control. And we have to learn to be okay with that because we have a democracy that allows us to vote in the people that we trust to do the things that we can't control. The day that you think that you should be given access to all the secrets, that's basically the day that you stop believing in democracy. And you start thinking, I can do my job better than the people who are elected above me. If that's what you believe, then we're a lot further away from our goals of successful democracy than we thought.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I wonder, are the things that you learned things that we will learn about in our lifetime, or is it just stuff that's probably going to get swept under the rug forever?
I mean, it's probably stuff that's going to be swept away forever because it's just one of those things that not in our lifetimes, unless something unexpected happens, but it probably won't, right? And it's secrets that, some of those are secrets that were there before I was even born. Where I was like, really? That's how that worked? And it still works that way? And it's probably never going to stop working that way.
Interesting. What about like JFK, for example? Like this is something where I feel like Occam's razor comes into play, and the simplest answer is that we just had a kooky communist dude who shot him.
I would have said that, except that in 2000, what was it, 18? 2000, no, it was 2000, I think it was 2018 during the Trump presidency. The time came to re-up.
Just release all those. That's what I was going to ask you about. I think it might have even been, was it Trump or was it Biden that was just like, actually, we're not going to release that CIA file?
And that's whoever it was. When that moment happened, what that communicated to me, and probably to you, but maybe not to all the other Americans out there, was that there is something still relevant. Still, there's a secret in that file, at least one, that's still so damaging to national security that it can't be released publicly. That doesn't necessarily mean Americans shouldn't know it, but it means it can't be released publicly because publicly released information is also available to our adversaries. So the fact that something 50 plus years old could still be so relevant that it requires reclassification, that's a big deal. And that's not the only instance of that. There's a lot of 25x2, 25 years times 2. There's a lot of clandestine or confidential information, classified information that's classified for 50 years, 25x2, that gets re-upped again.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be.
What do you think of guys like Assange and Snowden leaking secrets? As a man of secrets yourself.
Assange and Snowden are not even in the same park. They're not even in the same lane. They're not similar people at all. Snowden is a traitor against his country. He swore an oath, signed a paper that said he would not disclose secrets that put national security at risk that could harm American lives. And then he did exactly that. And he released information that could harm American lives. The fact that a different court than the court that originally deemed the collection of metadata legal, the fact that a different court overruled that previous court ruling shouldn't surprise anybody. That is the entire judicial process. That's why there are appeals. That's why people are convicted in 1 year and 2 years later they're released. That's why we're looking at a president who's been convicted of being a felon, but then at his next appeal could be granted, release or whatever else, right? That's the way our court system works. So we shouldn't be surprised that he whistle blew on a program that a different court had a different opinion about. That is not the argument. The argument is, did he damage American security? Did he hurt American lives by whistleblowing to The Guardian, which is a foreign news source, which he then used as leverage to travel from anti-American country to anti-American country until he ended up in Russia? Snowden. He did everything wrong. He is a traitor. He does not ever deserve to come back. Julian Assange is a completely different ball of wax. He's not an American citizen. Did he disclose secrets? Yes. Did he steal those secrets himself? No. Could he have been used as a covert influence parrot because he released certain information and not other information? Yes, but he's not under American jurisdiction. So he didn't sign an agreement. He didn't swear an oath to protect the American people. Completely different person, which I think is why what we are seeing play out, like Julian Assange is making progress in kind of being granted citizenship or recognition for what he did without being a criminal. But Snowden is a Russian citizen now, like as un-American as it gets.
That's going to be a great clip, and I don't normally say or think like that, but that got you fired up on that one. I appreciate that. Do you know much about the MSS, Chinese intelligence? I wonder what level of familiarity / respect you have, because they seem like they have just gone leaps and bounds in the past few decades.
Yeah, I am willing to say that I have a very healthy respect for MSS. I have more knowledge than most people. but not the most knowledge of anybody at CIA. But when you think about the Ministry of State Security in China, you've got to look at them through a lens of not just their capability and their resources, which has grown along with Chinese resources, but also their foundation and their beginnings, which came from SVR and KGB before that. So just like China has been on the rise economically and they've been on the rise technologically, there's no reason to suspect that they're not on the rise through their espionage practices as well.
I would say probably even more so because, and I'm sure, look, tell me what you think, but states like Russia, right? They're never going to beat, especially as we've seen now, they're never going to beat a major world power in an armed conflict. That is just not going to happen. Look, nukes aside, whatever. They have to rely on the cyber capabilities, intelligence capabilities. Israel's very similar, right? They're not going to be able to invade 7 countries or whatever it is.
Right.
They got to have amazing intelligence and cyber capabilities, failures aside. China's very similar, right? Them building a navy, it's happening, but it's still kind of a joke. Space program, again, happening, still not really up to snuff. They're making tons of strides, don't get me wrong, but it just makes sense that they would have a disproportionate intelligence program, because if they can invest a few $1 billion in that, it's going to punch a lot harder than another battleship.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that China's intelligence program, it's not just about having a capable intelligence program, it's about having time. Mm-hmm. From 2001 to 2022, the United States was not focused on intelligence. We were fighting a war on terror. Mm-hmm. China was not part of that war on terror. So for 21 years, they got to invest their growth in a different capability. Military modernization, technological innovation, the spreading of the Belt and Road Initiative, the spreading of Chinese influence around the world. They did not get distracted by a war on terror. So all the trillions that we spent on a war on terror, they invested somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And if we're not getting an ROI on our investment, just think about the ROI they are getting on theirs.
Yeah, exactly. I do, of course, think and worry about that quite a bit. My friends who are operating in the Middle East told me, hey, there's a Chinese base near us, and I think it was Djibouti, actually, I take it back, in Africa.
Still the Middle East.
Yeah, the Horn of Africa. Yeah. They said that whenever they're out operating, there's just this Chinese base, and they can just see there's antennas, they're looking at them, they'll drive around, they'll get close to what they're doing. They're testing weapons. The Chinese are just sitting there looking at them, taking pictures. When they were doing they would even get in firefights, not in Djibouti, of course, but in other areas. And they said there was just this Chinese unit that would deconflict and call in and go, hey, we're just Chinese guys over here. Don't shoot at us. We're just over here observing what's going on because we have interests in the area. And they're like, what Chinese interests are in the area?
Yeah.
And they were just watching how America fights, how ISIS fight, whatever it was, just watching everything happen, just kind of just sitting over there videotaping the whole thing. It was, a wake-up call that nobody's apparently
waking up to. Because they do a fantastic job of creating a narrative that they're our friend,
right,
that they're a trading partner, and that we are economically tied together. And in reality, they are creating lots of economic divergence that gives them the option of not cooperating with us anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have to, because otherwise we can unplug them from the markets.
Exactly. And the whole world, that's the problem, is that the American MO of economic leverage and economic dependency, that thing that keeps us in control of NATO, that thing that keeps us in control of our relationships in South America and Latin America, China woke up to that and then started duplicating and mimicking it. And then during the whole global war on terror, they were just making more and more people dependent and reliant on them. And now we're at a place where Biden and Trump woke up and they were like, oh shit, COVID happened. Had COVID not happened.
I know.
Holy shit, dude.
Ironically, probably caused by Chinese incompetence and or malice, and also certainly the Xi Jinping overplayed his hand with COVID. All we can do, tell me if you agree, all we can do is hope that Xi Jinping continues to overplay his hand. That's really the only thing that's going to stop China, is if the man at the top and the cult of personality screws up and makes a couple bad moves.
Yeah, I mean, that's the soft underbelly of authoritarianism. Right, that's the same thing with Putin, and the same thing with Kim Jong-un, and the same thing with even with Netanyahu right now. When strong men governments, authoritarian governments, when they overplay their hand, when they make a mistake, nobody says no.
Yeah, nobody says no.
Whereas here in a democracy, lots of people might be like, I don't think that's a good idea. Yeah. And some people even put their foot down and make it a public offense and whatever else. Right. But bad ideas slow down. Good ideas slow down too.
Tell me about, if we could do a quick comparison, tell me about CIA compared to the FSB, compared to Mossad, for example. And also, let's throw out for honorable mention the ISI over in Pakistan. Have you dealt with them? Well, don't tell me that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were, comparing CIA to the various intelligence, so for an apples to apples comparison, we have to compare them against the foreign intelligence collection capability in other countries.
Right.
So in Russia, the foreign collection is SVR. FSB is their internal collection. So Russia's SVR versus America's CIA. America's CIA is better funded. It's more modern. It's based in democratic principles, right? So it's more motivational than manipulative. SVR is more manipulative than motivational. However, they're ruthlessly pragmatic. They are also very well funded. They are less reliant on modern technology, but way more capable in the proven traditional tactics. Like in CIA, if we think we can do something with cyber that we don't need humans for, we'll just do it with cyber. But in Russia, they're like, we will do both.
Yeah.
Right? Why not? Compare that with something like Mossad. Mossad is the external intelligence collection capability for Israel. The internal police, so the Shin Bet, right? Internal FSB equivalent is Shin Bet. When Mossad goes out, a big part of the difference between Mossad and CIA is Mossad knows everything around Israel wants to kill Israel.
Right.
In the United States, we don't feel an imminent threat from all around us. So our risk tolerance as CIA is much reduced. The risk tolerance for Mossad is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
If they need to ride a bicycle next to a car and stick a bomb to it, they will.
Yeah.
Right? If they need to kill somebody in a public square to keep Israel safe, they will. So very capable, very well funded, very skilled, but also like very brazen.
Yeah, I wondered why you thought that is. I mean, you see, I was reading an interview with like a nuclear scientist in Iran, and he's like, can you believe they blew up this car and how they're coming after me? And I was like, yeah, you work for an enemy state and you're trying to get nuclear weapons. They will drone strike you with your family in the car. I'm not sure how bad any of us should feel about that.
With a second drone to put the whole thing on Instagram.
Right, yeah.
Right? They will do that.
To show everybody, we did that. And people go, wow. You see this on like Instagram. They go, how do we know that Israel did that? They admitted it. Why would they do that? You know how good the branding is when you can be in Tehran at a cafe and someone rides by on a motorcycle and shoots every single person at the meeting and then gets away with it? Or what was the other one that they did where the Mossad had like rigged up a truck with a 50 cal machine gun or whatever in the back. The truck drove next to this guy who was in a convoy, shot the car into a million pieces, and then when people were like, who's in that damn truck? It blew itself up, and they videotaped the whole thing. It's just nuts.
It's branding. It sends a message. It's covert influence simultaneous with covert action. It's a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
It's a 2-for-1, right? But they're not the only brazen service out there, right? Pakistani ISI, also along with the India RAW, the Research and Analysis Wing. ISI for Pakistan and RAW for India, very brazen intelligence services with a foreign collection priority that nobody even knows exists because they're primarily working against each other.
Working against each other, yeah, exactly.
But the shit they do with each other is nuts. I mean, they basically carry out covert terrorist operations against each other. They sabotage each other. They steal from each other. They have no problem with assassinating leadership from each other's countries. Like, it's a nutsoid world, especially when you consider the fact that both Pakistan and India are American allies. And somehow these two very talented services, probably trained by us, are taking that training to fight each other and using techniques that we would never sanction in a million years.
Yeah, very interesting.
And then the last one I'll mention, we've already talked about MSS, but I'll throw out there that the MSS for China, China's Foreign Intelligence Service, is all the best parts of SVR. They've learned so much, they've been funded so well, but they're even less risk tolerant than CIA. Because where CIA has no problem being the world's bad guy, MSS doesn't want to be the world's bad guy.
No, they want to save face, yeah. They're also, I've seen some clunky crap from them that I was surprised, because I thought, my friend, they tried to honey trap a friend of mine. Very messy. I mean, very sloppy, amateur, bullshitty kind of, but also kind of KGB-ish. Like really like out there.
What kind of girl do you like?
Yeah, and it was just like, it was a fake interview that with a journalist, and then she wanted to do it in her hotel room, and I was like, are they just trying to get you to realize what this is, or is it just really, really clunky. And I'm sort of on the fence, but I don't know. It could have been one or the other.
Or yeah, because they're also like decentralized in a lot of ways, and
Oh,
they don't report up bad news very well. So it could have just been it could have been sloppy, or it could have been amateur, or it could have been just a junior officer making a bad call.
Yeah.
Because how do you get promoted in
Right.
China? You're the son or the nephew of somebody else.
Yeah.
So fresh, so new.